Hey, good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the Sunday morning news and politics show for the Hoosier State without all the bad faith BS, both sidesism, and mega gaslighting. My name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I am broadcasting from Bloomington. Another big week in the news. We've got quite the packed show, and I've got quite the panel of guests here to talk about it with me. First, a little housekeeping. Do be sure to subscribe to Project Next here if you're watching on YouTube. Like and share this video. Hit that bell icon, get notifications whenever we have new content. Also, be sure to subscribe to me, Scott, here at HoosLeft.us. Find me on the socials at that handle as well. All right, enough of that. Let's meet our guests this week, starting with attorney, journalist, all around swell fella, Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Welcome, sir.
And general pain in the butt. So no, always good to be here. Now I think I got my technical issues worked out, but the day's still young. So
good to have you. Always enjoy your contribution to these conversations. And listen, whenever Abdul's around, it seems that Tracy Martin is always around too. There is Tracy, host of the Bluer by the Lake podcast up in the region there. Tracy, how you doing?
Oh, good. So glad to be back here.
Always love having you around. You, I believe, have surpassed all others to become our number one all-time guest.
Stop it. For real?
Love having, yeah, I think you've been here more than anybody else. I'm not really counting, but we always love seeing your face.
Do I get a pin?
I will make a joke about seeing Cliff Marsiglio's face, but he will make that joke himself, I am sure. Cliff, welcome. Nice hat.
Thank you. I've been told that we are not allowed to talk about Antifa anymore. Membership has been burned. So I have the official Indiana Jones hat. So if you're looking for inspiration of who to punch, always ask, who would Indy punch?
he punched Nazis, just so you know.
Yes,
Hey,
yes, he did.
Calling somebody a Nazi as a hate crime, Abdul. I need you to stop with the hate crimes.
Hey.
I'll only call you a Nazi if you're actually a Nazi. So
that's what we're going to talk about. That's our one big thing today, in a way. Not Nazis necessarily, but what we're allowed to call people and what we're allowed to say in public over the public airwaves or anywhere else for that matter. So, listen, let's begin this week. Let us start Indiana, and I'm going to open up our Indiana portion of the program in jail. No, not like that. We're going to talk about the Indiana Department of Corrections. A couple quick stories from them this week. So, this one, we're going to start from the invaluable Indiana Capitol Chronicle. The state will resume $6 million in jail payments to 41 counties. This is tied to a couple different things. There was funding tied to like level 6 felony diversions. Folks like this used to be held in state prisons. Now they're held in local jails to offset costs. Additionally, there's also reimbursements for jail holds where inmates who have been convicted of state crimes remain in county jails until the Department of Corrections picks them up. I don't know. I don't fully understand all this, but what I do see is that, you know, local jails have been sort of in a bind without this money from the state that they really rely on. Now, Abdul, you're an attorney. You come up against the criminal justice system in your work. Is this something that you see that folks in your circles are talking about?
If you're asking us, is a guy on the street at Target talking about it? No. If you talk about the political class, the budget class, to a certain degree, yes. And if you think about it, the state's late payments is, first of all, it's nothing new, to be brutally honest with you. When the states have done this before, they delayed payments so they get their budgets in order. But I think what this one is just basically, with all talk about public safety, the perception of crime is out of control. Then juxtapose that with the states, the Medicaid, the budgetary shortfalls. Now it looks like we're not going to have one. So is it a big deal? Yes. Is it Escape from Alcatraz? Probably not.
No, and then really the bigger story in the criminal justice world in Indiana this week, I think, is more that the state, the Department of Corrections, is requesting almost $16 million in upgrades for the Miami Correctional Facility that is just outside of the old Grissom Air Force Base there, south of where's that? North of Kokomo. I want to say north of Kokomo. Anyway, so the DOC is requesting $15.8 million from the state budget agency to upgrade the Miami facility as they prepare to house ICE detainees. The facility is going to require a series of infrastructure upgrades and equipment acquisitions, and they want to have this done sometime before October 1st. That's when apparently we're going to be housing ICE detainees right here in the Hoosier State. Cliff, we've talked about the constitutionality of this facility before, the opposition from people in the region to this before, but now we're into the apportionment phase of this thing. It's really happening, huh?
Yeah, right now here in Marion County, Sheriff Kerry Forrestal is housing about 100 ICE detainees a day. $75 a pop comes to about $7,500 a day that we are spending, and that's almost $3 million a year. Given that the sheriff has been asked to, people have asked the sheriff not to do this, but it's in his best interest to continue doing it. He says, well, I don't think there's a way to stop it, but his salary is dependent on what he is being given by the state and the federal government. And there's an extra $3 million that he didn't have last year. Barry Forrestal, I can't find the numbers from the last 2 years, but I believe he's one of the highest paid public employees, with his base salary being about $160,000 in 2022. I can imagine it being quite a bit more this year because we are not providing those prisoners adequate support, and whatever we don't provide to them goes into his slush fund.
Ooh, that's particularly gross when you look at it that way. Are we giving sheriffs performance incentives for locking people up like they're I don't know, a quarterback or something? I don't know. You see that stuff in sports contracts or CEO
100%. I mean, just like when you talk about folks who are constitutional sheriffs in Indiana, as well as constables, their salary is dependent on how many people they can get into their facilities.
Okay, so let's back up on this a little bit for people like me for whom this is brand new news and it's gross. All right, so ICE is paying all this money for prisoners to be housed at our expense. We are the ones that determine what care they get, what food they get, what kind of bedding they get, all of that, all of the things that make them be able to be living beings in our care are under our control. We get $3 million. Did you say a year from
a year? That is just Marion. That is Marion County alone.
Marion County alone is getting this. So, and who controls that money?
It goes directly to the sheriff's department. The sheriff gets to choose how it's allocated. Whatever extra goes right directly to his salary.
So there's no stopgaps between his salary and that money. If he wanted to say, oh, I can cut these corners here and take 3/4 of this and throw it in my bank account, nothing would stop him.
And that's exactly what happens in most of these jails. When you find jails are being underfunded, it's almost always a sheriff who's looking at his bank account saying,
Shut
I would
up.
do better. Yeah.
Well, and I can't speak for Forrestal, but we do have multiple cases of corruption in various sheriff's departments across the state. I do need to move on here to our next story, and let's talk about other gross things and the continued redistricting push from the Trump administration. Basically telling Indiana to get their butt in gear and steal the old guy a couple of extra seats in the House of Representatives in next year's election. So this week, Governor Mike Braun, floated a potential November special session for redistricting here in the Hoosier State. Speaking on Fort Wayne's WOWO, he said the state is, quote, in the process where we will evolve in that direction, and continued to emphasize, as he has in recent weeks, that he wants Hoosier legislative leaders to take the lead on the issue. Translation, I don't want to get blamed for this. So he says he wants it to be where it wasn't forced upon our legislature. Have our leaders talk to their own caucus members. Some have already changed their point of view when they look at what good comes from it. Now, he says, I think eventually we'll get there. And this is the key quote from this interview. He says, if we try to drag our feet as a state on it, probably we'll have consequences of not working with the Trump administration as tightly as we should. Tracy. This sounds like, number one, Braun's passing the buck. He's saying, I want the legislatures to
Yeah, you guys,
legislators to lead on
you
this.
bring it to
But
me.
also,
But you're right.
listen, if we don't roll over, we're gonna get shaken down by the Trump administration. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the most mealy mouth thing I've heard from a MAGA in a long time, and it's delightful because they're running into the same problem that all the Republican legislators are. They do not want this. And not because they don't want to deliver a few more seats to the Orange Cheeto. What they want is to protect their districts. And they know we've already been gerrymandered to the point where any further tampering, those Democrats have to go somewhere. So no matter how you redraw the lines, you cannot make safe gerrymandered districts anymore because it's already been gerrymandered so much. And again, I'm going to say this till I die. Indiana is more purple than people think. When you get down to the granular level, you look at county by county, by city, the vote counts are razor thin in so many places. And they are one toll road, one Medicaid cut, one bad choice away from this state going blue again. So I say again, bring it. And I'd feel bad for Braun if he wasn't such a piece of shit. So, you made your bed. Enjoy trying to navigate this nonsense.
Abdul, a lot of these guys are your average Indiana Republican legislators trying to come back for a special session in November.
No.
They don't want to work extra, do they?
Okay. Here's what's going on here. And I have a little bit of a different perspective than the other panelists because I kind of live this stuff every day. I was actually working on this a little bit earlier this morning for the show today. In a nutshell, here's what's going on. Trump wants redistricting because he wants to get a couple extra congressional seats. Okay, fine, whatever. But here's the problem with that. And first of all, the Speaker and Senator and Rod Bray, they have no appetite to do this whatsoever, period. None whatsoever. I know that for a fact. They have no appetite to be bothered with this. However, because of the position they're in, they got to sort of walk that public fine line. Number two, the Speaker told this recently to a group of, I want to say civil engineers that, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Okay, here's a carrot on the stick. Here's what the Trump administration is doing. They're saying, look, you can do it. You can do what we tell you. You can let us tell you what to do in a nutshell. So we need you to redraw the maps to give us, one to possibly two more extra congressional seats. By doing that, what the Trump administration is saying, hey, Indiana, You need some tolling authority for I-70? We got that for you. Need a Medicaid waiver here or there? We got that for you. Need Medicaid reimbursements for your rural hospitals? We got that for you too. And it'd be a shame if all that were to go away and disappear because you guys didn't redraw the map. So that's the one side of this whole thing. Now here's the other part. You start messing around with the 7th Congressional District, Andre Carson's seat. You basically take the 7th and you turn it like a giant spin wheel, which is one map that's kind of floating around out there. You will unleash
there on the graphic there.
Yeah, you will unleash so many Krakens that it is ridiculous. Because you have these lot of these. Because remember, the vote totals in a lot of races really aren't that much. It's like 55, 45, 52, 48. A bunch of African American women older start coming out and voting. You can have some problems, and not only in the 7th Congressional District, but I would argue statewide. So you can literally see a situation where Elisa Shala, Dan Elliott, I forget the other person who's on the ballot next year. All that could possibly change, literally. So, Diego Morales, yeah, that's right. How can I forget Mr. Diego? So think about this: redistricting out there. Diego Morales at the top of the ticket, really?
Yeah. That's not exactly. Let's just say Diego's not the centerpiece of a statewide.
He's coming to my
race,
town.
So no, well, all right. So also in this regard, let's talk about the Democratic response. Again, Indiana Democrats are in a super minority. There's not a whole lot they can do to push back on this if Republicans decide to go ahead with it. They did hold a rally at the State House on Thursday and got a boost with a visit from Pete Buttigieg, who was in town to speak at the rally. Also visited Bloomington on Thursday night to give a student moderated talk hosted by the Union Board and LGBTQ Culture Center as part of its Speaking of Excellence series. I went. My date was Cliff. Cliff, do you have any thoughts from Buttigieg's lecture that night, or perhaps his speech earlier in the day at the State House?
Unfortunately, I was at Indiana University while he was talking at the State House, only to rush down to Indiana University, Bloomington, to see him speak later in the night. From everything that I've heard, he gave a great speech about redistricting, made a lot of good comments. Now my brain's blanking, but what we heard later in the night was it only takes somebody who's well spoken, who can reach across the aisles, and we change these voting, or we change the votes. Pete won in a very Republican area, and he won several times because he comes from a background that relates to the right, even though he is a gay man. Being a gay man in the military, well spoken, who can listen to somebody who tells him off and then still comes back and says, I'm going to help you, goes a long way.
He had a really good quote during the event Thursday night where he said, about growing up gay in Indiana. He says, I've never automatically felt that I was in harmony with my surroundings. And so, he had to learn how to navigate those dynamics, and that's resounded to his benefit down the line here. He's really effective communicator, and he's especially good as far as Democrats go is speaking to the conservatives. Like he's great on Fox News. Let's stay on campus, Cliff, and talk about the massive drop in international enrollment at both IU and Purdue. This is from Axios Indy. So enrollment is down across the country as international students continue to contend with visa issues, travel bans, and concerns about the Trump administration's immigration crackdowns. So Indiana's nearly 30,000 international students contribute around $1 billion to the Hoosier economy. Purdue, which leads the state in international student enrollment, saw a decrease of nearly 15% across their entire system. IU about 14%. So international students and graduates grow the economy, create jobs, and they benefit U.S. born students as well. Abdul, comments on this. From an economic standpoint, if you look at nothing else, this is going to hurt towns like Bloomington, like West Lafayette, like South Bend, perhaps.
Well, as someone who's been teaching for almost 25 years, and a good chunk of that here in Indiana, I've never had a problem with occasional language barrier. Never had a problem with an international student, whether it was Ivy Tech, University of Indianapolis. I mean, you name it. And the University of Indianapolis, we have a large international body of students, and they work hard. They want what everybody else wants. Good jobs, good schools, good credit, good everything. And this thought, or this sort of dog whisper that these immigrants are taking stuff that belongs to regular Americans. No offense, but if regular Americans would do more, and there is a finance and science and STEM technology, that problem kind of solves itself. Because remember, college enrollment in Indiana had been dropping for a while anyway, and enrollment hadn't been where it's supposed to be. And so, if I have an international student who wants to come here, wants to work and be a good citizen, why deny them, and why make anybody feel unwelcome? Obviously, we'd have a talk about civil dialogue in this country, but why make anybody feel unwelcome and not want to come here, particularly when you get paid by the student? In a nutshell.
Oh, especially Abdul, and I'm glad you brought that up because I guess international students make up something like 6% of the enrollment at Indiana colleges and universities, but pay 28% of the overall revenue because these are folks that are paying full price, whereas a lot of your in-state students are getting some sort of financial aid. International students subsidize the rest of us, and I think at the end of the day, you can put all your xenophobia aside. It's good for our communities. It's good for our universities. It's good for our state. I want to move on to talk about one more quick little state initiative that popped up this week before we spend the rest of our Indiana segment talking about the growing data center problem. So
I don't think data centers are a problem, and I'll explain why.
Well, we will get there. But first, let's talk about this Power Up Indiana workforce training program. Mike Braun announced this new endeavor. It will become the centerpiece of the state's workforce training program, utilizing $10 million appropriated by the General Assembly. The goal is basically to reimburse companies that train existing employees into new positions. That will result in at least a 25% wage increase. The reimbursement rate is up to $5,000 per employee and $50,000 per company. So now, again, no complaints. We need more workforce training. Absolutely. In 2017, Governor Holcomb introduced the Employer Training Grant Program, which sort of did a similar thing. Now, Cliff, is this one going to take off? Is this going to be noticeably different? What do you think?
I've had in my work in education, I've dealt with people trying to do or trying to do. Why are words not coming to me today? Uh, Education upgrades for businesses. At several universities, we're working on credential systems where you get a certificate just like you would on any massive online campus, where you have a little badge that you can put on. These are not going to. We've tried to do this for 20 years. I've been a part of some of this. I've looked at it. I have never seen any success from any of this. As soon as somebody's skills are up, they find a way to drop them back down and say, you know what, we don't really need those skills because it's vocational training. And vocational training has this very hard habit, with the exception of plumbing or electricity. Vocational training is a lost art where you should be giving people the skills to learn anything. This is one of the reasons I love liberal arts training. It teaches you to teach. When you're teaching these very specific vocational training, for instance, if you teach somebody how to edit video, oh, are they going to use Audition or are they going to use Adobe Premiere? Well, the company may just switch from one package to the other, and you've lost everything because they've taught the very basic of how to do one task. I'm not smart enough to tell you about other vocational areas, but I do know technology.
Yeah. I'm glad you make a good point with this vocational training. It's like in a way, you're always trying to catch up to technology, and technology is always sort of outpacing you a little bit, especially with this AI boom that is coming and may displace countless workers. And that ties in very nicely to what we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so talking about here. And that is the massive growth of data center construction in Indiana. Now, Abdul says he's pro data center. We'll get to that. We'll also talk about the potential drawbacks. But right now, more than 30 data centers are already operating just in central Indiana. Often they're there and you don't even really know they're there or what they're doing. And while the state celebrates the growth, not everybody is a big fan of this. Indiana's offered tax breaks to lure data centers, and just last month, the IEDC approved incentives for more new projects. Now, up in Tracy's neck of the woods in northwest Indiana, a couple counties away, not right next door, but over in LaPorte County and western St. Joe County. So saw this great short movie. It may be 12 to 15 minutes from More Perfect Union. Links in the show notes. It's on YouTube, talking about the proliferation of data centers in Northwest Indiana, specifically this huge Amazon Web Services $11 billion data center in New Carlisle is their largest capital project, and the largest in the state's history. We talked last month about how Department of Environmental Management has already been involved in that project as their construction is impacting wetlands. We just saw this week another potential data center in the New Carlisle area get an unfavorable recommendation from the St. Joe Plan Commission. And then also in Michigan City, again, 20 minutes from New Carlisle there, the city council there voted to give a massive data center a tax abatement for 10 years, after which the city is estimated to get about $1.5 million a year. We don't even know who's building that one yet, just that it is a top 50 US based company. A lot of shadow companies and holding companies and paperwork shenanigans to obfuscate the actual owners of these facilities. Excuse me. So, Tracy, I'm going to start with you because that's your neck of the woods. Are you getting them in Lake County as well?
Oh yeah. Well, they're trying. So here's the thing to understand about NWI for anybody listening who's not really super up on the region. we do not have the land resources that some of the other counties where these are proliferating are. Like in particular, like my area, I live in Munster, which is right on the border with Chicago. We are landlocked. Like we have almost no space left to develop, but they found a corner that they want to appropriate for a data center here. We also have a super aging grid, and it's not been invested in. We don't really have, so the next storm that goes, if they have that data center, we're all going to be without power. It's a problem when you're looking at this area. We just don't have the land that they are looking at is adjacent to wetlands and protected areas, because I mean the way that the national park works, it's like latticed with private land. So there's a theoretical opportunity for somebody to say build a fucking Amazon data center right in the middle of the Indiana Dunes National Park. Yeah.
So Cliff, Indianapolis also has big data center controversy right now, right? So
Yes.
there is a development on the southeast side of Marion County that is up for a vote before the city council there. This is a 467 acre hyperscale Google data center that is supposed to bring $1 billion of investment into the community, but also has a lot of potential drawbacks. Now, the people in that community do not want it there, and Republican councilor Michael Paul Hart, who represents that area, has come out as a strong no, as have 16 other members of the city county council there in Indianapolis. Bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans alike. Now, of course, they're not necessarily tied to their public statements. They could vote a different way. That is tomorrow, right, at the city county council meeting there Monday night. Now, so lots of electeds, lots of locals don't want this thing there. Franklin Township Community Schools flipped their positions earlier this week, and they wrote a letter of support to the councilors. Now, Hart says that on social media that the school accepted a buyout from Google in exchange for their support. So really only one person has really been vociferously for these data centers, and that is
Ron Gibson.
Councilor Ron Gibson, who also has said that there might be another one coming to the east side at an abandoned old drive-in movie theater. Cliff, talk about data centers in Indianapolis.
So the one on the south side, I got to watch Michael Paul Hart give an impassioned speech to a largely socialist crowd. I could not believe how bipartisan it was when you have the furthest right person who is also, by all means, a tech bro, speaking out to the socialists, and everybody was eating up his words. This is how hated these things are. People know I'm an AI first person. I sold one of the first AI products for Indiana University in 2000 to the College Board. If you took the SAT, you might have used my software to assess your writing skill. You may not even know this. I don't feel bad about AI. I do not believe that these data centers are a good thing, though. And when you look at the tax breaks, we are going to be losing 10 times as much as we gain. This $1 billion worth of infrastructure is not going towards the city. We are on the south side. We are looking at approximately the space of 2 Indianapolis speedways full of just concrete, no place for the water to run. As Tracy had mentioned, this is going to destroy all the wetlands. We have been talking about We need to figure out a way that we can find the money that used to go to soybeans. We lost $700 million in soybeans that are rotting on the ground this month right now because we aren't selling them to China anymore. And we're trying to figure out where we're getting that money back. We're not going to be getting it from these data centers. Ron Gibson is literally the only person who is supporting these, and that's because Joe Hogsett told him to support them. Joe Hogsett is the Mike Braun candidate for Indianapolis. He is the one Democrat who will do what Braun tells him to because Joe likes to cower. He likes to hide in his office in his basement in Nora and cower to Mike Braun. I've seen it up close. I've seen them both. I've seen Hogsett grovel to Braun in person. It was disgusting. And I can tell you, they didn't even see me until I came up to shake their hands. Something that I'm a little embarrassed that I wanted to do because I don't like touching either of them. But I needed to make my presence known after they just were after Braun was groveling or Hogsett was groveling to Braun. And now we have Ron Gibson groveling to Hogsett so he can pass the grovel up the line so Braun can grovel to Donald Trump.
Okay, Cliff, listen. So you said you're an AI guy. You're pro AI.
Oh yeah.
You know, I use it some. We all use it. We all use a ton of data. We're using a ton of data right now. They're gonna have to go somewhere, right? So, Cliff, you posted a good link to the Indy Star's James Briggs. James Briggs making an argument for data centers in his column this week. Abdul, do the same.
Well, here's the thing, and you're absolutely right. Data centers are sort of the new NIMBY, so to speak. My late lovely mother used to have a saying I've been using a lot lately, is that everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. Now, here's what that means. when it comes to the data universe, we all have our phones. We all love sharing our memes, streaming our Netflix, our Hulu, or Amazon. We all want the data. Okay, that's fine, but the data's got to go somewhere. Where is the data going to go? Plain and simple. You don't like the data center? Okay, fine. Then what's your solution for all this massive data that, by the way, which is growing like crazy? As you know, everybody has a cell phone. You know, we all tweet, we all post on social media. This program is streamed on the internet. I mean, the data's got to go somewhere. So my thing is, you make the most of I won't necessarily say unpleasant. You make the most of the situation, and in a nutshell, that's it. In Franklin Township, you know what it's about. It's fundamentally for the school district. It's about money. Let's be honest. It's about money. Schools don't have as much money as they used to. Here's some money. Here's some things our kids need. We'll take it. Over near Mortonsville, I just interviewed the head of their economic development corporation over there this week for my Indie Politics program. And he said basically what their data center people did was when they built those relationships, they had the people in, the locals in from day one. I think that's probably more the problem with the Google data center is not so much the data center, sort of how it was done. But at the end of the day, you may not like a data center. Okay, fine. How are you going to get all your stuff?
There are ways to do that, though. The problems we have with these data centers are when you talk about Google, they're coming to the Midwest because they can do things more economically cheaper than they can out west. Out west, they force everybody to use closed loop cooling systems. Closed loop cooling systems mean we're not putting water chillers on the roof and spraying water that should be going to crops. It should be staying in the wells for our urban or for our rural people. It is putting a strain on our water cleaning supply. Yeah, uh, we have closed loop versus open loop. That in itself would, if we use closed loop, it's going to add 20% to the overall bill. However, it would save our water systems. we do need data centers, and I'm not against data centers. I'm against destroying our environment to do that. There are multiple ways to do this ecologically sound, but we are going and saying, you know what, we're going to give you all the money so you could do the worst job ever, so you can use outdated equipment that is not electronically sufficient. You can, in 10 years, we're going to have chips for AI that require 10% of the power that we're doing now and do 10 times as much as we are today.
And then what are we going to do with these hulking buildings that are dotting our entire state's landscape at the breakneck pace that we're building them, have no environmental safeguards behind them, and are being managed? Okay. So Abdul, before you accuse me of being, regressively and reflexively anti anything that a Republican likes, I'm not. I work in tech. I've been doing AI forever. What I object to strenuously is AI being built in our backyards because we don't have anybody that is taking care of us or providing reasonable safeguards watching over. I don't want AI centers built all over Indiana under Braun's watch, because he does not give a good God about any of the things that Cliff just mentioned. He's not going to do anything to protect our water supply, to protect our farmland. Because if this is Indiana, we're supposed to grow food. If all of our farmland is taken up with big, hulking, huge data centers, where are we going to grow soybeans when we need them again? And will that land be contaminated permanently?
The issue I think with these, Abdul, before you go on, I'll let you talk here, is that we're giving away the farm, sometimes literally, but it's like a race to the bottom. We're giving away tax abatements and valuable land and water resources, and subsidizing the building of these things with our electric bills, when it doesn't have to be that way. Like, we could have these things, but like Cliff's saying, okay, do the closed loop water system, cover these things in solar panels so they're not on this pulling power from the same grid as the rest of us, or so they're self-sufficient.
Paying for the infrastructure up front.
Yeah, and furthermore, like Tracy up there in your area, like, that's where these things should be. We've got a bunch of old, decrepit factories and warehouses and stuff that maybe aren't as useful anymore, where we could redevelop that space. And y'all are on the lake. I mean, there's as much water as we could ever possibly need there. We don't need to be sucking these things out of the groundwater. We should be, listen, we've, like, in Michigan City, we got the coal plant there, and there's the big cooling tower. Everybody thinks it's a nuclear thing. They use the water, they cool the water, they put it back in. Now, I'm not saying NIPSCO's a great environmental actor, but I'm saying there are things that
when you come up here and
they shouldn't be here where there's no water.
More development on Lake Michigan, it makes a lot of us go, rah! Because do you know, okay, if you've ever come up here and gone to the beach next to the BP refinery and watched the oil go cascading out over Lake Michigan, you get really, really, really suspicious about what industry will do up on that shoreline.
I'd rather have a data center than an oil refinery.
Well, yes. Again, oh yeah. If you take BP away and put a data center there, I'm with you. They're not going to do that. And also, again, I don't want any more development along Lake Michigan unless it's being managed by an administration that cares about environmental quality. That Lake Michigan is something that we protect. It is one of the largest reservoirs of fresh water in the world. It provides the drinking water for people in 3 states. There's 4 states. You're right that yes, NWI has more land that would be better suited to developing out as data centers. But Again, it has to be done with the sort of planning and care that Cliff is talking about, with people that are putting in environmental safeguards. Why can't we have, even with Lake Michigan right there, why can't we have closed loop cooling systems? Why can't we have noise abatement guarantees? Why can't they be required to restore certain amounts of wetlands for any wetland places that they're taking, or put in money to wetland development or parks in the area? We could have data centers in Indiana, but we're not going to have them in the way that they are getting them in more well-managed states.
Yeah, Abdul, thread
I
that
think
data.
Sure. First of all, like I said, number one, why do we need the data center? For the purpose we're here today. We're streaming. We're having a civil, thoughtful, no one's shooting each other conversation about data centers, the whole 9 yards, and we're using data to do it. And this data is probably going to be somewhere in a data center somewhere. That's kind of point number one. Point number two, I'm going to push back a little bit on my good friend from Northwest Indiana's, because I grew up in Chicago, so know all about Lake Michigan, the whole 9 yards, and looking at getting a little place up in Michigan every once in a while to buy comic books and relax with my edibles. So I can totally appreciate, the lakefront, the beaches, the quality of life scenery that's there. However, folks, I go back again. The data's got to go somewhere. Where's data going to go? Matter of fact, there was a forum this week, the Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute. I'm a member. We talked about Indiana's energy usage and water, and the 800-pound gorilla in the room was, guess what? It was the data center stuff, because that's what everybody wants to know about. Now, how these data centers are going to impact our energy usage, the whole 9 yards. And the conversation I had with one of the executives, and I take his word for it, unless I see evidence to the contrary, is Abdul, the data centers are a lot more sustainable than they were in the past. And it's like technology, it's like everything else. Things get better with technology and with time. We're in the early stages of these data centers right now. So I think the questions that are being asked about energy use and tax abatements are fair questions, but at the end of the day, the data's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, Cliff.
And I gotta say this.
Yeah,
I gotta say this. If we don't build these data centers, where's Beckwith going to get the bandwidth to make more nude models of women across Indiana? If we don't have Beckwith making every woman in this state nude and perfect breasts, because that's what he cares about. He wants to use his Christianity to show breasts off in his office.
we didn't even get a chance to talk this week about the frat house culture in the lieutenant governor's office, but you know who has a great story about that? Mr. Abdul Hakim Shabazz at indypolitics.org. Interview with former LG office employee Aaron Sheridan. Good stuff over there. So
Thank you.
let us move on and talk about this week in the national news. Now, obviously, the big story from the week is the continuing fallout of the Charlie Kirk assassination and the free speech fallout from that. Now, again, that's our one big thing. We'll talk about that here in the last third of the show. But there was other news in the United States this week, and we will start with Secretary of State Marco Rubio on a jaunt to the Middle East in response to last week's Israeli attack on Qatar, to U.S. allies in getting involved in a skirmish. So Rubio on Monday went to Jerusalem to meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In that meeting, in addition to discussing the issue with Qatar, Netanyahu also apparently asked the U.S. to press Egypt on their military buildup in the Sinai Peninsula, which Netanyahu claims are substantial violations of their 1979 peace agreement. I had not heard that one until this morning, so interesting stuff there. The Middle East, it's always just waiting to boil over. Rubio from Israel went to Qatar to talk with them about the incident, effusively praising the Qataris, saying that they are the only country that can mediate an end to Israel's war on Gaza. this is shortly after he warned that there was only a short window remaining to secure the ceasefire. Meanwhile, on Tuesday, Israel announced that it had started the main part of its ground operation to control all of Gaza City. They made that announcement conveniently right after Rubio left Tel Aviv. Tracy, I haven't heard from you in a minute. Thoughts on Middle East, Rubio, Israel, Qatar, real quick.
Well, Qatar is not going to necessarily be the best suited to solve this dispute if Israel continues to bomb them. The logic gap here. I guess where I really want to go with this, whenever I start thinking about the Middle East, and then over in Europe with Russia and Ukraine, it's really funny to think back to Trump's promises that he would end both wars within a week.
If you got all the authoritarians working together, theoretically they can get things done. And you got your Trump and your Putin and your Netanyahu and your various emirs and sultans and whatnot from over there.
That Stogie Club just isn't working. Yeah, they're not. Everyone seemed to think that, well, at least Trump seemed to think that he would magically, all the authoritarians would, they'd all sit down at a country club and have a little chit chat, and then all these world affairs would go away, poof. But apparently, authoritarians like to authoritarian on their own terms and time. And so we're not seeing these magical resolutions that were promised. And in fact, things just keep getting worse and worse and worse. So I think we're all just waiting for the inevitability of spreading war and conflict in the Middle East, because Trump is not managing to. And if Trump can't do it, Marco Rubio can't. So, good luck with that.
If we get through the next 10 years without a major war in the Middle East, I will be shocked. Pleasantly surprised, but I would like that, but I am not confident. Let us stay in international diplomacy and talk about President Trump's second state visit to the UK. Now, normally they don't do this. They give president one state visit and that's all. But new monarch, who dis? So they give him a second state visit with King Charles hosting this time. So the president was greeted Tuesday night to Windsor Castle by a group of political activists projecting giant images of Trump and his buddy Jeffrey Epstein on the side of the castle. 4 people
Prince Andrew in there too
for this stunt. There was some Andrew in there too. Yeah, Prince Andrew, Charles' little brother, also a notorious friend of Jeffrey Epstein.
Andrew likes to get into things he should not be getting into.
I was going to say, before we talk about the meat of his visit, just thoughts on the stunt. I know you enjoy a good political activist stunt.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. I have never orchestrated any political stunts in my life. None. Not any. No.
Lies. All lies.
Including.
Go ahead.
I've been told by journalists multiple times, if you want to get on the news, you need two things. You need to actually be focusing on something that is informative. You need to tell somebody a story, but you also have to make it interesting. Because let's just face it, most people watching the news, they don't give a fuck. They want to see entertainment in the form of news. So you have to be a little over the top. And
I disagree. I disagree. Someone's been in the news business for a while. People pay attention to what's relevant to them, what's relevant in their life, what's relevant in their universe. And I always argue, as a news person, journalist, my job is to explain to you, okay, either A, here's why you should care about X, Y, Z. Now, my audience is a little bit different because my audience is basically the political class. So our perspective is a little bit different than, say, our friends in Indiana Capital Chronicle, or the Howard Report or any news organization right then and there. But at the end of the day, the point of news is sell advertising, and I got it, and I sell advertising by making whatever I'm talking about relevant. Which is why still the local news is the most watched thing live on television. People don't usually record the news to watch it later because it's already kind of old and past. But the one thing that's still live is local news, and local news still matters, but it's got to be done in the right way to make it relevant to regular people. Period.
But if it bleeds, it leads. So I mean, like the attention grabbing thing still goes first, right?
It
And
does.
I
I
this
mean,
certainly grabs attention. So listen, the next day, after Trump's lovely greeting, the next day,
I wish you could have seen his face.
Trump and Melania and her hat flew to Windsor by helicopter, where they were greeted by Charles and Camilla, and a royal salute was fired and in Windsor and at the Tower of London, and the king invited Trump to inspect the Guard of Honor. Unfortunately, he did not invite him to inspect the Tower of London and then leave him there. And then Wednesday night, a traditional state banquet was held in the president's honor, attended by guests including Rupert Murdoch and Apple boss Tim Cook. From there, the president and first lady, actually, no, the first lady stayed behind. The president traveled to meet the prime minister at his country house Chequers in Buckinghamshire, where he was greeted by Sir Keir and Lady Starmer. And the two negotiated or signed rather a previously negotiated trade pact, which would see billions flowing in both ways across the Atlantic. The majority of U.S. investment to the UK coming from private equity firm Blackstone, as well as Microsoft and Google. UK getting them some data centers too, Tracy.
Yeah, maybe they can put one on Stonehenge. There you go.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. Does this accomplish anything, or is this just Trump basking in the royal pomp and circumstance, which
That one
kind of seems to be what he really wants for himself?
Oh yeah, this is just nothing but masturbating Trump's ego. That's really all it is. And the British public is rightfully mortified by this, as they should be. The obsequiousness of it is nauseating. You just the whole list. It's like it. You'd think that the country of World War II and Winston Churchill would have at least a little bit of pride left in their own sovereignty as a nation, but they're protecting themselves, or maybe they're just trying to distract the baby, and they're putting on Blue's Clues for him. I don't know, but I think that there will be at some point. I just hope that there will be some sort of reckoning for all of this collusion with
the Brits offer a very important case study in the decay of a once great empire. I hope we are studying these because we are
the same
repeating that track. Yeah. It seems like. Let's stay in international diplomacy with this week. Well, that's actually the second week of the UN General Assembly. However, the general debate, which is, the big meeting, begins this week on Tuesday with at least 188 heads of state, heads of government, and other high-ranking officials preliminarily set to speak in New York through September 29th. So, already sparking dismay ahead of this year's event, and this story comes from Al Jazeera. Already sparking dismay has been a decision by the United States under the Trump administration to withhold or revoke visas for Palestinian Authority and PLO officials to attend the gathering. That comes at the same time that France and Saudi Arabia are set to host a conference on Israel and Palestine, promising to join several European countries in officially recognizing a Palestinian state last week. Belgium became the latest country to do so, following France, Malta, Australia, Canada, and the UK. Abdul, thoughts on the Israeli-Palestinian angle vis-a-vis the UN General Assembly, the visa ban, and the recognition from these foreign countries?
Well, still, proverb may live to see interesting times. I think we're interesting with a capital I, believe it or not. I look at it like this. At the end of the day, this is going to sound really bad, but Arabs and Israelis and Palestinians have been basically fighting over desert for 6,000 years. It's a desert. We visit the desert. We go gamble in the desert. We don't live in the desert. And in a nutshell, they're basically fighting over land that's basically, it's a dispute that's 6,000 years old. And I don't know how you stop people from wanting to kill each other who are basically related to each other. You know, family fights are sometimes the worst fights in the entire universe. Now, with that said, the United Nations, it is what it is. And I think it's interesting that these other countries are, recognizing, Palestine as an independent state once and for all, and basically saying, what the U.S. is going to do, what the U.S. is going to do, fine, we're going to go do our thing and move on.
Because the U.S. will veto at the UN Security Council any effort to formally recognize a Palestinian state by the larger body. So this year we are seeing, this is from the same article, multilateralism challenged from inside and out. Despite UN leadership seeking to strike a celebratory tone, as this is the institution's 80th anniversary, the last decade has been punishing for the global cooperation the body has long spearheaded. Obviously, Trump in his first administration withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord, the WHO, and the UN Human Rights Council. Then former President Biden got us back into those things. Trump gets reelected, takes us all out. Not good for stability and consistency. Certainly, also this administration, Trump has undertaken widespread cuts to foreign aid, including hundreds of millions of dollars to UN agencies and caps on further spending. Despite this, the UN still is far and away the largest funder of the UN. So, with the U.S. sort of receding from its leadership role, China has for years sought more influence in the UN, particularly through peacekeeping missions, and then also South Africa and Jamaica this year have really leaned into UN mechanisms like the International Court of Justice, leading the charges against Israel for their genocide. Tracy, I'm going to ask your thoughts on the rest of this week's General Assembly.
I don't know what to say about that. Like I'm not actually probably the right person to talk to about that. So I am going to boot that one over to Abdul.
No worries. Hey, my name is Abdul. So when it comes to the Middle East, I know I'm an expert. Yeah, whatever. Like I said, welcome to politics in the 21st century. This is it. I'm just waiting for Khan Noonien Soon to pop up, to be honest with you.
I mean, Cliff, I remember when folks our age were growing up, you get to a certain age and you do the mock UN, right? I think mock was supposed to be a adjective there and not a verb.
I was a dirtbag back then. I was an academic dirtbag, but I was a dirtbag nevertheless. I didn't hang out with the model UN people. I hung out with theater geeks and other nerds. However, the one thing that I'm waiting for is I just want to see the whole theater. Speaking of theater, I want to see this whole theater of Mondami personally arresting Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, we're going to have to wait till next year because, the election in
Oh,
New
I
York
hate
is
that.
going to be after this week, this week's visit from the Israeli Prime Minister. Wow, we're still talking about international trade and diplomacy because that's kind of where this week has been outside of the death of free speech in the United States. So, we've also got the Indian Commerce Minister coming to the U.S. for trade talks this week. That is Piyush Goyal. He will lead an official delegation to the U.S. for trade talks on the 22nd. That's the middle of this week. The U.S. has imposed a 50% tariff on Indian goods. I want to say due to their continued purchasing of Russian oil. This visit assumes additional significance amid the U.S. administration's sudden decision to hike the application fee for H-1B visas, which is the next story. A lot of Indian students come over here, and then Indian workers later come over here on the H-1B visas. So, Tracy, do you got something to say about this one?
I mean, I think for India and I'm going to dive this over into something that was on my mind earlier. With these foreign students, we're now creating a culture where we've undercut all of the benefits that they've provided us. We've created a nation where we're foreigners and trade partners now feel unwelcome. And when you do that, you undercut everything else that you've done. Who's going to want to send their kid to the United States to be educated here? For two reasons. One, when they get here, ICE might snap them up and keep them for 6 months and you won't hear from them. And two,
Yep.
because our education system is being kicked into the toilet now. So we've lost all that revenue and we've lost the cachet that comes with it. We've lost all of the development and the R&D strength that our country used to have. And now other foreign trade partners are not going to want to send their expertise here. We haven't even touched on what happened with the South Koreans for all of this manufacturing might that Trump wants to resurrect in the great old industrial belt of the United States. And then they send the people over here to do it. And then ICE comes along and says, I'll take you all. Who in South Korea is going to want to come and help us build our battery powered plant factories? No one.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that is a major international incident. The South Koreans are not happy that this was done to their citizens. And, those are the folks, high-skilled foreign workers, like those, South Korean, like battery technologists and engineers that were building this factory. Those are the same kind of folks that are going to use H-1B visas. And companies would, I assume, have to be, number one, wary of paying $100,000 a year now. This is the proposed new fee that the administration is seeking to implement. So let me clarify. The H-1B visa is a work visa. It's not a student visa. It's a different thing. The H-1B work visa is valid for 3 years and can be renewed for another 3. Economists have argued that this allows U.S. companies to maintain competitiveness and grow their businesses, creating more jobs in the U.S. Example, battery stuff. We're behind on that. We need Korean investment, Chinese investment even. They are farther along on their battery technology than we are. So, we need that to jumpstart that industry here. Many companies use these visas to fill their workforces because there aren't enough American workers with these skills to do so. But Trump signs this executive order the other day on Friday to impose this $100,000 application fee for these H-1Bs visas. What he says is an effort to curb overuse of the program. Also, in a separate order, Trump also directed the creation of a gold card immigration pathway that he said would fast-track visas for certain immigrants in exchange for a hefty fee. The policy will expedite visas for foreigners who pay $1 million while allowing a company to pay $2 million to speed up the process for a foreign worker that it sponsors. Cliff, we were talking about the sheriff's office earlier in town and the money they get for housing ICE detainees and how it can become a slush fund for them to use however they want. I see this $100,000 fee for these visas and these $1 million plus gold cards as just another potential slush fund for the administration to do whatever they will with.
I mean, we've been doing this for years, though. There's been programs where if you are an immigrant and you commit $5 million to building a U.S. business and continue to fund it at $1 million every year for the next 10 years, you are given citizenship. We've been doing that for the last 20 years. So there have been programs like this. We don't know where the money goes to for all these, but they have had these similar products. I step back from some of my friends. I do think that we need to slow some immigration to making sure that jobs are available to the people coming over here. I think we need to make sure that we have skilled labor. I'm one of those people who believe that if you come here for education and you stay here and we recruit you, maybe all this gets waived because you have been educated in America. I want to see skilled workers here. I want to see skilled workers training our next people. You might not be able to see this here, but I've got, let's see if I can, my camera does not move that well. I've got skilled manufacturing in my office right now. I've got a small CNC machine and 3 3D printers. I talk to students.
Those 3D printers.
A lot of times it's helmets. I'm gonna.
CNC music factory in your house?
I've also got my synthesizers over here.
Stop this.
But yeah, I want to see. I hand kids a caliper. They don't know how to use caliper. You hand an international student a lot of this stuff. They come trained in engineering before they even get here. We are not training the next group of students on how to use the technologies that are here. It's interesting watching the places that do teach 3D printing. Honestly, it's one of those things where if I were running a school, every student would know how to run a 3D printer.
Yeah.
So,
lots of stuff there. Go ahead, Tracy.
Here's the question. If Trump continues and Republicans in general, MAGA Republicans, continue this trend of attacking America's institutions of higher education, how are we going to accomplish that? Or is this a trade school sort of situation to you?
I look a little bit differently. I would argue that actually coding is sort of the new trade school in a sense. I argue it is because number one, it's the plumber, it's the mechanic, it's all that stuff that I have no idea how to do, have no desire to learn how to do. I got enough jobs as it is already. Because remember, my dad said I need to learn to change on oil. I was like, why? Like I go to the store, I go to the oil change place. It's done in 10 minutes. I don't know how to do that because my skill set is in another universe. And I think to a certain degree, that's where we are with the H1 with the visa situation. Because look like this, you wouldn't need the skilled labor if you had the skilled labor here, plain and simple. And I think the visa debate is just symptomatic of a bigger issue we have in this country now, which is make sure we have a skilled workforce that can do the jobs of the 21st century, and at the very least know how to think and how to critically think so they can adapt to the new jobs of the 21st century.
All of which requires a robust system of post-secondary education, which is not something we're investing in now. And the institutions that are currently providing it are under constant attack by this administration.
We're going backwards there on that. I do need to move us along to the next topic here. Federal Reserve this week cut interest rates for the first time this year, and the first time in quite a while, actually. Jerome Powell, Fed chair, says, quote, the labor market is really cooling off. So the policymakers opted for a quarter point cut to the central bank's benchmark rate, bringing it down to 4%. Now, the labor market, as Powell said, appears to be slowing dramatically. August jobs report showed just 22,000 jobs were added. And that report also showed that we lost jobs in June for the first time in quite a while. The Trump administration has been putting pressure on the Fed to lower rates, kind of ahead of the schedule they wanted to do things. But Powell and the Fed had resisted that pressure, saying their dual mandate of both keeping unemployment and inflation low meant they needed to be careful not to overheat the economy and risk a return to rapidly rising prices. We recall we talked about this over the last couple of weeks, that Trump is trying to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook, the first Black woman on the board of governors, over trumped up allegations of mortgage fraud. She hasn't been charged with a crime. And for all reports on the matter seem to suggest that this thing is a cooked up witch hunt. She remains in place. Now, what is interesting this week is that, the Fed is lowering rates because the job market is slowing. Well, inflation still remains stubbornly high, and probably will as long as we have this tariff regime in place. So the Fed are in a bind here, because the only tool they really have is to raise and lower rates. I am not an economist. The economy is not my strong suit. I don't know. Abdul, you're far smarter than I am. Can you explain this rate cut and why it's important?
Yes, it is. It's classic. It reminds me of an episode of the Twilight Zone where the guy gets like a foresight he's going to die by getting hit by something, in 2 days, and so he tries to avoid getting hit by the car, but everything he does is getting hit by the car. If you think about it, the Fed cutting interest rates to deal with inflation. Well, why are we dealing with inflation? Well, let's see. We're throwing tariffs on everything. That's rates causing prices to go up. You got your visa situation where we're short in the workforce. So guess what? Got to pay more, and so the price goes up. And everything that the Trump administration is trying to do is cause inflation. Like, here's the thought: how about you stop? And they'll cut that crap out. Be a real free market capitalist like I am. Let the economy kind of sort of run itself. I mean, I jokingly say these guys came as social conservatives, but they're governed as conservative socialists. Is what they're doing.
Oh, especially, yeah. Well, I mean, we talked a couple weeks ago about, the administration taking a stake in Intel. Now, as a socialist, I approved of that. You probably wouldn't, but it makes strange bedfellows for sure. Let's move on to this story here. One I wanted to spend a little bit of time on. So, for the third time in 2 weeks, the United States has struck an alleged drug boat in international waters. Trump said Friday that he ordered another one. And like I said, this is the third such strike in 2 weeks. The second one this week. Now, according to Trump, the strike killed 3 men who he called narco terrorists. Now, that's where I want to focus, because we talked a couple weeks ago, or it was last week, about the legality of such strikes and how they're brazenly unconstitutional, and how the right thing to do would be, if these are drug boats, you seize them, you arrest the people, you try them in court, and you prosecute them from there. You don't just execute them with no due process. Why this is particularly dangerous, and I'm going to quote here from Just Security. So, with the Trump administration framing its lethal strike in the Caribbean as just another military counterterrorism operation, Trump referred to those killed as narco-terrorists, and what little formal legal justification the administration has presented repeatedly refers to an unspecified designated terrorist organization. Many Americans and members of Congress, inured by over 20 years of targeted killings of supposed terrorists, may be willing to accept that representation, but the administration's characterization is inapt and elides a vital distinction. The Trump administration tries to cloak this fatal attack in the mantle of the war on terror by using the rhetoric, tools, and trappings of military counterterrorism operations. Yet, the similarities between the Caribbean attack and prior U.S. hostilities against Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and their affiliates are superficial at best. So, yeah, Tracy, are these the same thing?
No. And, it's interesting because I thought as a country and a civilization, we were kind of against nation states going rogue and attacking ships upon the high seas. I mean, we just, yelled at Yemen and the Houthis about that. So how is this any different?
Oh, well, we're allowed to do it. They're not. That's how it's different.
That's it right there.
Yeah.
We're just basically saying we're doing what we want.
Yeah.
And it's criminal.
I'm particularly worried in this because here we are. I remember talking about this 25 years ago in the buildup to Iraq. Well, they can just call anybody a terrorist now, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's to stop them from designating Cliff and his rogue band of bicyclists as terrorists? And drone bombing you on the streets of Indianapolis.
I guess we're going to be getting into this segment soon, but nothing.
There they are. See?
Wait, what is this?
That is Cliff's terrorist organization.
I love it.
No, it is not Cliff's terrorist. I found these on the street as somebody was passing them out. I know nothing about these people. Nothing.
But you need to find out.
I need to find out who these people are because
Doesn't it say
apparently. What's that?
Did that say scab?
It said SCAR, Shadow Council of Anarchist Radicals.
Well, they can't be much of a shadow conference if they're handing out bumper stickers.
It's like these people. It's like these people are hidden in plain sight. They may be even going to city county meetings. They may be harassing politicians. Who knows? They're going to be outlawed pretty soon.
They look just like us. Abdul, from a legal standpoint, I mean, this is a very slippery slope. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Because what happens if you make a mistake? That's always a problem, and that's where the pushback is going to come. Now, I will say this. From a PR perspective, if you disagree with what the president did, I understand that, but good luck. It looks like you're defending basically narco-terrorists. So for my friends who are opposed to what the president's doing, they have to be careful how they frame the argument.
I mean, that's what they did us, in
Do
after
right.
9/11 in the lead up to Iraq. It's you're supporting the terrorists. Like, no, we just support the rule of law. Thanks.
Yeah, but Abdul has a point. It's very difficult to make that distinction. And I remember because I was a student protester down in Gainesville, Florida at the time. My husband and I stood on the corner by ourselves with signs, and people would throw rocks and bottles at us out of their cars they drove by. The idea of terror, it's such an easy label and mantle to apply because there are no defining parameters that everybody can agree upon.
We have the greatest military in this world. Given such, we don't need to take shortcuts to bring these people to justice.
No.
We have warships that cost as much as entire nations. We could go in, capture any of these narco terrorists, bring them back to justice.
Get information?
Yeah, I want to know where this fentanyl is coming from because on my wall, I have Narcan. I have had Narcan that I distribute throughout Indianapolis. And illegal drugs and and fentanyl and everything else is killing people in my community. I want these people prosecuted. I'm not one of these people who believe that we should legalize all drugs. We should not be allowing these terrorists to bring drugs into our nation. And I want them brought to justice. I don't want them murdered, because how the fuck do we know if we're getting the right one, or if we're just virtue signaling to say, oh, we just killed some brown people in South America? That's good enough. That's not good enough for me. I want their operations stopped, and we are just going for the photo ops.
Or it's a North Korean fishing boat out in the dark while we're doing a special ops mission that we don't want people to know about.
Yeah, that
Or-
too. We talked about that one recently. Abdul, go ahead.
Here's something else to think about too is, and I've always said this about our war on drug type issue. Whenever we declare war on some of this country, we usually get more of it: war on poverty, war on drugs, war on whatever. But I do think if you really want to deal with the drug issue in America, I say you got to. You'll love this for you Gen Xers. You got to go supply side on the drug issue. In other words, why? What if you the supply goes away if there's no demand? And so the question is, why is there demand for drugs? Why is there demand for fentanyl? What's going on in people's lives that they feel the need to escape 24-hour, 24/7 a day? Is it mental health? Is it the economy? Is it something else? I'm not saying go all socialist or not by any stretch of the imagination. What I am saying though is if you don't look at it from the demand side, you're going to have an issue. You're never going to solve the problem unless you look at why people want it in the first place.
Well,
Absolutely. And that's something we talk about
I
all
like
here.
where you're thinking with that, Abdul. I do. I am all about looking systemically at the issues that face our nation. And that's always the smarter lens to start. But I think the idea that we'll ever be able to eradicate drug use by
No, we won't. People use, by the way, people have been using drugs since, I would say, since before day one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's never going to go away. I think it's a medical issue. I think we need to look at ways of treating drug addiction in that way. Because, I mean, look at cigarettes. You know, you find a stimulant and there you go.
Yeah, this is the thing we talk about on here all the time is tackling these issues upstream. It's efficient, it's cheaper, and it's also the right thing to do. So, I do have to move on and to our last story here. And really what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap these into one, because although it's the next one on my list, it looks like Larry Ellison and the Ellison family are going to be buying TikTok here in the U.S. if Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping can come to an agreement when they meet here later this month. Now, we'll talk about that vis-a-vis media consolidation, because it's an important part of the discussion around free speech. So let us sort of wrap these things into one, talk about the aftermath of the Kirk assassination, the way it's been used to crack down on free speech. We had the Jimmy Kimmel suspension / firing, we don't know at this point, announced earlier this week, and that's sort of been what everybody is talking about, and I think for a good reason, because if there is one thing Americans value, I think above all else, and that really, like, almost all of us across the political spectrum agree on, it's that the government can't punish you for your speech. So I guess let us look at the Kimmel firing, talk about how that happened, and why it is a very ominous development. So on Monday, Kimmel, during his monologue, made a point, or he was making a joke, and it wasn't even really much of a joke. It was more of a statement when Kimmel said that the previous weekend, Trump and his MAGA gang had been pointing their fingers at everyone attempting to characterize the alleged shooter as anything other than one of them, which, I mean, I think that means just like, another white conservative guy with a gun, which tends to be who does most of these mass shootings or political assassinations. Now, Trump people were livid about this. They thought that statement was out of bounds, offensive, and they demanded Kimmel's firing. And largely, they got their way, but not maybe the normal way you would think about it. So I'll get into that in a second, but first I think I want to get your reactions to the comment. Did Kimmel say anything like over the line? Trump's FCC chair Brendan Carr called his comments truly sick and said he appeared to intentionally try to mislead the public about the shooter's alleged political leanings. Cliff, was Kimmel out of bounds?
No, he had the most placid take on any journalist that I've heard. I mean, I'm seeing educators fired for specifically posting in context quotes, long form context of what Kirk has said. We are seeing the largest abridgment of First Amendment speech that we've seen in my lifetime. I'm one of those people. I grew up in punk rock scene. I grew up in scenes where we had I grew up in where we saw the cancel culture come up, but cancel culture comes up from the people. I'm not going to shop at Target because of this. I'm not going to use my money for this. I'm not going to support somebody for this. And I support that. When it comes to the government, we actually had a White House who, on the first day in office, Trump signed an executive order saying he's restoring freedom of speech and ending federal censorship, made a large statement about this, saying that we are not going to be the nation that abridges people's First Amendment rights. It seems like everybody involved in this is violating Trump's executive order.
Yeah, well, Tracy, if I recall, that was the reason that young men in particular swung toward Trump in this last election. You're very concerned about getting canceled, cancel culture run amok ever since Me Too, right? You can't look at somebody sideways without getting run out of the public sphere, right? That's what they say. Yet, I mean, this is cancel culture run amok, isn't it?
It's really amazing how people value free speech until the person speaking across from you says something you don't want to hear. So I'm going to say something that people don't want to hear. And I am really sorry, Scott, if you can edit this out if you need to. But
no, we like them spicy, Tracy. Give it to us.
The assassin here was raised in a conservative, Christian, gun-forward household. This is true. It's not up for debate. He is a product of a generation that is notoriously slippery in the way that they represent themselves in speech and online. I don't know what his motives are. They could have simply been personal. It could have been political. Is there really any difference at this point? But the fact is that he was raised in the system that MAGAs are trying to promote as the ideal American household. Make from that what you will.
Well, yeah, I mean, so a couple things there. I mean, they whether or not he held their values still at this point in his life, they taught him how to shoot. But if we don't know we don't know what the motive was, and like you attested to, the kids like that are just like perpetually online. It's there's a mishmash of right and left, and they don't line up neatly, and it's mostly just like nihilism and memes, and it's like I
And
I
can you
don't like
blame
any
them?
of the things that are going on, but in the hours immediately after the shooting, the right was calling for blood, before
Oh,
we knew
yeah.
anything. And now, like, and we still don't know. And then we could get into like these text messages that were released and whether
Or
people
what
think
he
they're real
inscribed
or
on
not.
his bullets. The thing
But
is, oh, I
but I
just
was going to say, the point is, we don't know, and they called for blood immediately, and now that, like, okay, maybe there is like this person was involved with a trans partner, that somehow means like uh, all trans people and their allies are a danger. We talked about the use of the terrorist label, with these Venezuelan drug boats. I'm afraid that the government is going to designate trans people and their allies as terrorists. They just designated Antifa a terrorist organization this week. Good luck. I mean, Antifa isn't real, but Abdul, what are your thoughts on this thus far in this segment?
Well, first of all, I'll just remind people that the First Amendment protects you from the government, plain and simple. The government cannot control your speech. Now, defamation, threats, intimidation, that's not protected speech. But the First Amendment protects us from the government. Now, when the government starts using its muscle, say, hey, unless you get rid of, Abdul off of WBC, you're not going to get this waiver that you guys need to build XYZ. That's when we start getting into what's called state action, where the initial person climb down the speeds, that's just a pretext, and really it's the government that's doing X, Y, Z. So when the government says, hey, get rid of Jimmy Kimmel or get rid of this late night talk show host, otherwise you're not going to get your Paramount merge that you want, that I got a major problem with. However, with that said, um, although you have a right to free speech is free, but there are also consequences, plain and simple, because you do not have the right to go to somebody's private business and yell X, Y, Z. You just don't have the right to do that. And when somebody says we don't have free speech, like, yes, you do, but there are also consequences to that speech as well. So you got to keep that in mind. There's no joke in radio. You can say anything on the air once, and then we can say it one time. Then after that one time, you got to be willing to deal with the consequence of what you got going on. Now, someone asked me, "Are you worried about being canceled?" It's like people are trying to cancel me for 30 years. I'm still here.
I'm glad you brought up the distinction with the government versus the private organizations, holding you to the consequences of your action, because that I think was always the thing about this whole cancel culture argument. It's like, no, you're like, no one's taking away your right to free speech. The government isn't punishing you for like being an asshole on social media. You just don't want to live with the consequences of it from your family or your employer or whatever. Now, in this case in particular, the pressure to cancel Kimmel came from like the local station owners. It came from Sinclair Media, which owns television stations all over the place across the country, including several in Indiana. They are a right-wing ideological organization, and there are plenty of receipts to show for it. Likewise, another big owner of local television stations, Nexstar, also pressured ABC
We call
to
Nexstar Death
cancel
Star.
Kimmel. Yeah. So yeah, no, Nexstar, not Death Star, not yet, not until their merger goes through. But these companies own a bunch of ABC affiliates across the country, so they put pressure upward on on Disney, which is the owner of ABC. Well, it it turns out that, okay, so Sinclair, we know they're ideologically motivated. Nexstar, I don't know if they're ideologically motivated, other than, they're ideologically motivated to make more money, and they want a big merger approved by the Trump administration to merge with a company called Tegna, which is a weird company name. If you combine Nexstar and Tegna, they're going to merge into a company called Smegma. Do not look that up if you don't know that word. Now,
I do.
that was a joke. They're not really going to merge into that company, but I joke because this is very serious. So these companies, have business before the FCC, so they put pressure above on the Disney execs. Now, look, the Disney executives were like, I don't know, man. I don't think Kimmel did anything wrong. He didn't violate our terms and our standards and practices on the air. He didn't say anything, highly offensive. But all of their affiliate owners have the ability to put a lot of financial pressure on them, right?
And this is why Jimmy Kimmel is actually looking at litigation, because once again it goes back to that whole state action issue. It's the government using its power, using its influence to clamp down on American speech. Like I said, we're not talking defamation, we're not talking about threats or not about overthrowing the government, not talking about that. It's about the debate that we have. Now, is late night television the place to do that? 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. We can argue that. But there's no argument that when the government starts clamping down on speech, regardless of how it does it, whether left or right or whatever, we got a problem.
Yeah. Well, and I guess that, they would say, oh, listen, the government's not cracking down on speech. This is a private decision by, Sinclair and Nexstar and Disney. The government's not.
Tell that during the deposition.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, number one, Trump went out there and called for Kimmel's head, before his show was over.
The FCC head did too.
FCC, yes. So did Brendan
Mhm.
Carr, Trump's
Openly,
FCC chair.
publicly.
And that, I think, legally is where you run into issues, because there you do have a government entity, the FCC, saying this guy should be pulled. Now, did they order it? No. Did they apply pressure? Yes. And I guess Abdul, that's you're into the point where you're splitting hairs legally, yeah.
No, not splitting hairs. It's I'm pretty sure about this. There's no hair to split. Just ask Cliff. I mean, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, the executive order that came out January 20th of this year says ensures no federal government officer, employee, agent engages or facilitates in any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge the freedom of speech of any American citizen. We are not to use any taxpayer resources to engage or facilitate in any conduct that would unconstitutionally abridge freedom of speech of any citizen. And we're going to identify and appropriately take action to correct past misconducts of the federal government related to censorship of free speech. This is plainly spoken. This is not even lawyer speak that I would have to talk to Abdul about. This is plainly spoken words in this executive order, probably written so Trump could actually understand what it was, because we know he's functionally illiterate. But this is set up in this executive order stating that anybody from the federal government who abridges First Amendment is in violation of our governing rules at this moment.
And I'll tell you what, we found some strange allies on this week. On the left, I found myself this week agreeing with Ted Cruz, who came out against this strongly on his podcast, with Matt Walsh, who, the ultra far-right Catholic fascist on his podcast came out against this, as did Tucker Carlson. And I find myself nodding my head along in agreement with those guys, and then I had to go take a shower. But
yeah, same.
they're right.
They are right. Well, they have their eyes. They have enough critical thinking skills to be able to think outside of the moment and down to tomorrow and the day after, and to the potential for a democratic retake of our houses of government. And then what's going to happen to them then? You know,
Well, and here's the thing. This is where I'm like conflicted in a way. Because listen, I'm big First Amendment guy, big fan, huge advocate of being able to say what you want over whatever kind of platform you have. That's what I do here. But when you talk about folks like Walsh and even Charlie Kirk himself or Tucker Carlson or like, I kind of wish maybe we had some sort of regulations in place about the kind of things you can and can't say in
Nope.
public.
No. Can't.
Oh, no. Listen, no. Like, for example, look, in Germany.
Where are you going with this, Scott?
In Germany, it's illegal to fly a Nazi flag. I think,
or even a Confederate flag.
I think it should be. I think the Confederate flag is a symbol of terrorism. Like there are.
Question, though. But let's say, what if I have Confederate flag boxer shorts?
Only if they're poopy, then they're okay.
In public, you get arrested.
Oh, Scott, I want to be with you on this. I do. And Abdul, I'm probably going to surprise you here. I don't. Oh, the slippery slope of that. It just goes against my grain.
I know. But so look at like the fairness doctrine. Okay, so like Brendan Carr, he talked about broadcasting in the public interest. Which is, actually that is in the FCC. That's what their job is to do, is to make sure people are broadcasting in the public interest. Well, if you look back at like the 80s when we undid the fairness doctrine, or the Telecommunications Act of 1996, like these things have basically allowed hate speech to proliferate. It has allowed propaganda to call itself news. I mean,
here's my problem with the fairness doctrine. The fairness doctrine was invented when only basically 3 television stations. Three television stations, maybe an independent network, maybe a couple of radio stations in town. Now, with so many different mediums and so many different forums for people to get their information and misinformation, that's their choice. And we start talking about the fairness doctrine. Okay, well, does Fox, does MSNBC counteract the fairness doctrine for Fox? What about CNN? What about CNBC? You have so many media outlets. What about my podcast? What about this show? Someone says, "Hey, we want equal time." Okay, well, equal time against who? And Cliff, Tracy, me, Scott.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have 10 television stations here in central Indiana. They're owned by 3 people.
Yeah, well, and that's a separate issue, which I do actually want to come to here in a moment. But just, I mean, I'm not saying that there should be limits on speech. I'm just saying it's not as cut and dry as we think necessarily. Like, I don't know. Like, listen, Fox News. I talked to a woman last year. She made a documentary about Fox News and how it, brainwashed her father and how they used like actual like cult mind manipulation techniques to get people worked up into an emotional state. And I mean, if you look at our world now in 2025, would it have come to this place of political violence and the demise of the republic without things like Fox News out there?
No,
I'm not saying we should ban them or anything. I'm just saying, like, it's worth thinking about.
It is. And it's thorny as F. It really is, because your example, Germany, their laws still did not stop the rise of the ADP, and they are facing the same troubles that we are. They're
ADS,
batting them back a little better. And so,
AFT. Thank you.
thank you. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But the point is that they like nations across the world are facing the same resurgence of nativist totalitarianism and those instincts. They are embedded somewhere in our cultural consciousness, and to try to figure out how to root those out is a deep ask. And I think it hurts my heart as an American to start talking about governing speech. But you're right. Fox News has been able to manipulate the fact that an undereducated audience is extremely vulnerable to the kind of tactics that operate on a subconscious level. How do we address that as a nation? How do we make sure that our people understand how to responsibly engage with media? We don't have a system for doing that yet. We need one.
It's and it's really tricky because, like, yeah, you shouldn't be able to broadcast lies across the airwaves and call them truth. Now, the problem with that is, who determines what is the truth, right? Now, we've already got this administration, their memory holding studies about, the actual sources of political violence. They're, going ham on the CDC. So with an administration like Trump's in office, they can say this or that is the truth. And, if MSNBC, for example, goes against them, they go, oh, well, you're broadcasting lies. We're going to shut you down. And that's where you wind up getting into this problem of state media, right? And that's why I think we should be concerned this week about the TikTok purchase, which I mentioned as we got here. So that's the Ellison family, along with so that's Oracle. That's the Ellisons, Andreessen Horowitz, and Silver Lake. There's a equity firm, are apparently going to buy an 80% stake in TikTok, with Chinese shareholders owning the rest. It looks like Larry Ellison, the Oracle executive, would be the CEO of this new company, and Ellison, huge Trump supporter, right? Additionally, his son David is the CEO of Skydance, which recently merged with Paramount, giving the Ellisons control over CBS, including CBS News. They appointed an ombudsman, Kenneth Weinstein, a big Trump supporter, former CEO of the conservative Hudson Institute think tank, to kind of oversee what they're saying there at CBS. Apparently, Barry Weiss, former New York Times reporter, ultra-Zionist and big, like, anti-woke zealot, is on tap to become the head of CBS News. And additionally, this new conglomerate is looking to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. So then, in addition to CNN and Paramount, you're looking at Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, Discovery, CNN, like major media consolidation. So then you've got, imagine this goes through, you've got big Trumpers, Ellisons, Andreessens, running CBS News and CNN and Comedy Central. There goes your Daily Show, right? You've got cowards at ABC now knuckling under, canceling Kimmel in response to this Trump stuff. Obviously, we know about Fox and the Murdoch family. ABC, CBS, Fox. There's your big networks. NBC, to this point, is the only one that's not under the control of like rabid Trumpers. But I mean, are they next? Like, are we, Abdul, on our way to state media?
I don't think so, because here's why. In the American tradition, there's always been certain amount of healthy skepticism with our news business and news information, which I love and appreciate. However, I think that for the most part, people are smarter than we give them credit for, and people can smell. I think most people can smell a snow job when they see one. If all the news starts changing, Trump is great, Trump is wonderful, be like, no, I'm not watching this. And they stop watching, they start losing advertising. So I argue the best way to deal with this is you hit people in the pocketbook. I won't necessarily call it cancel culture, but you're right to spend your dollars where you see fit in on news organizations that you believe, reflect your values, which is, open, honest, free flowing, civil debate, or civil and spirited debate. So I would argue the best way to deal with this is with your pocketbooks.
Will there be any options left to vote with your pocketbook?
Yeah,
and like all of the news organizations are.
Yeah, no.
I mean, the worst part is Trump has floated investing 20% in ABC to get rid of the woke out of it. He's said he's going to put 20% of the government, he's going to buy 20% for the government of Disney to root out woke. That is government sponsored, that is state sponsored speech.
But it goes back to what I said before, which is, once again, the government is using government money and government resources to stifle speech. That's called state action, which is a whole different ball of wax.
Abdul, I would have agreed with your take on the American intelligence and the ability to interact skeptically with news if it appears to be slanted. But I mean, that's all Fox News is obsequious Trump coverage. Like, the biggest shows there are nothing but, and they are lapping it up like it is cat milk. Like, they are not engaging any critical thinking with any of that.
But Fox has the right to do that, plain and simple. Just like you don't have the right to watch. Just like Fox has the right to do what it wants to do, and you have the right to watch and watch other types of get your news information from other sources. Just people have the right to make bad decisions.
What I worry about is that essentially, if this trend continues, all of your mass media is going to be essentially government approved. And for a lot of folks, maybe that's all they're going to get to see. You're going to have to really seek out alternative voices. A lot of folks this week are saying that like the First Amendment is dead. This marks the end of the First Amendment. I don't think we're there, and I don't think we're ever going to get there, precisely because this country values our freedom of speech too much. But what's going to happen is the government line will be amplified. ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, CNN, all of them, government line. We'll still be able to talk. Lightest touch will still be able to go out there and do what they do, but you're going to have.
We won't be able to have jobs
yourself. You're going to have to. The algorithm won't boost those things, right? Like, you won't see it unless you look for it. That's like what I worry about. The social media. We haven't even talked about the social media aspect of this. We're talking about broadcast right now, but like, listen. Twitter, X, Elon Musk. That place is a rabid Nazi cesspool. Meta, Facebook, Instagram. They're in collusion with the Trump administration. I mean, left-wing speeches suppressed on there. They know who I like. Facebook has my data. They know who I am. They know what I do. They know what I repost and what I believe. They still keep serving me right-wing slop all the time when I scroll, because I am a 45, 46-year-old white man. Well, a lot of 46-year-old white dudes aren't as discerning as I am, not to toot my own horn. And then TikTok if if they're next, if that's government line, is there going to be any independent social media where the algorithm isn't suppressing you and only amplifying right-wing speech? That's what I really worry about. Cliff, am I crazy?
No, I think free speech is dead. I know you don't think that it's completely dead. It is for the extent of this administration, and if it continues further, I know that even though I work for an institution that celebrates free speech, I'm going to have conversations with my employer because I have not shut up. I am waiting my year and a half until I can retire before I actually say everything that I actually want to say because free speech is dead.
Tracy, dead or mortally wounded?
I'm not willing to say free speech is dead. I'm not willing to go down without a fight over my dead body. This nation, if there is no free speech in America, then what the hell are we for? Who are we as a people? I am not going to go down like that. And I know that there are millions that feel the same. I feel like to embrace this nihilistic belief that we can't change things is another dangerous way to go. Not, and I understand that instinct, Cliff, and I'm not bagging on you, but I am saying that for people who are listening and you're feeling despair over this tide that it feels like we can't shift. I don't believe that that's true. It's only been a week. We need to give it time and give people time to react. And then we need to react. We need to be pushing back on this in every place that we can. And I know it's exhausting and I know we don't want to have to do that, but it's if not now, when, and if not us, who? We cannot let the one defining characteristic of our nation that has united every single faction across us
Abdul,
go without a
Cliff
fight.
says dead. Tracy says perhaps dying. Is Abdul team tis but a scratch?
It's only a flesh wound, or it's mind upon the Holy Grail. I'm not dead. Actually, I'm feeling quite well. I think go for a walkabout now. Here's what you got to keep in mind. There's always been a tension regarding free speech in the United States of America. Go back to the founding of the Republic. What's one of the first laws that the founding fathers passed? The Libel and Sedition Act. They had the new government, and what can you not do? You can't speak out against the new government. That's late 1780s, early 1790s. So the free speech to a certain degree has always kind of been under attack, or at least under the microscope. I do believe that, like I said, in the 21st century, I give people credit. It's like a jury. The jury's always the smartest people in the room. You just got to convince them, hey, here's why you should listen to me. And so in the free marketplace of ideas, I think there's room for everybody to have their conversations. And if people start getting ridiculous and start, moving the news media, the people will react. And the fact that, like I said, I may not agree on Ted Cruz and a lot of things, but Ted Cruz is actually right on this one because Ted Cruz knows he's smart to realize that, hey, you know what? It's not Republicans aren't going to always be running the show. Democrats are going to be running the show sometime in the near future. And if they do, then guess what? They can do all the things to conservatives that to Republicans that Democrats complain Republicans are doing right now.
Abdul, your historical perspective is actually really comforting because we beat back McCarthyism before. We can do it again. And it didn't seem possible then, but it was. And at the end, you're having Senate hearings where people were laughing them out of the Senate chambers, or House hearings, or whoever was holding these hearings. So it's possible to turn this tide. It is.
And we have a lot more channels now, and this one we're going to keep using to speak our minds as long as we're allowed to. So let's wrap this thing up. I really want to thank you guys for being here with me today, and you've all provided such interesting takes and wonderful information. I want to give all of the folks out there listening an opportunity to find you. Where you at? Tracy, where can the good folks find you?
I am on Substack. I'm on anywhere you get your podcasts except Apple. I still haven't.
And that is at Bluer by the Lake.
Bluer by the Lake at .substack.com.
Cliff, where can the people see you doing your rabble rousing?
The best place to find me for my long form writing is cliffmars.com. That's Cliff with one F. Mars is in the planet. I put out a Substack that I write every several months, it seems like, or Twitter on Mayor Cliff on Twitter, which I picked when Abdul and I were running for mayor of Indianapolis.
Wait. You guys
very good.
ran against each other?
We ran against each other.
Get out of here.
It was in primary. It was in primaries, though.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. Neither one of them won their primaries. The world would be a better place if both had, I think. Abdul, indiepolitics.org for sure. One of the most indispensable sites for news in the state. Where else are you?
You can also find me on Twitter, ATTY Abdul. Don't have a Substack column per se, but my columns end up all over the place. So just do a Google search, Abdul-Hakeem Shabazz, and brace yourself.
All right, excellent. Everybody, subscribe to our fine panelists today. They are great, all of them, and I appreciate each of your contributions. I always love when you are here with me. Abdul-Hakeem Shabazz, Cliff Marsiglio, Tracy Martin, thanks for joining me this week. Everybody else, until next time, this has been the Who's Left This Week. Love each other, Indiana.